A heavy rain lashed down on the streets of Lyon, France, casting shimmering reflections on the slick asphalt. At the edge of an old stone bridge spanning the Rhône River, two cars lay overturned, twisted wreckage barely clinging to the guardrails, threatening to plunge into the dark waters below. Inside the first car, Philip Barrett, Deputy Director of Britain's Foreign Affairs, sat motionless, his face pale in the dim light. His fingers still gripped one half of a deep crimson locket, a secret token whose other half was elsewhere. That other half belonged to the man trapped in the wreckage of the second car. He was no ordinary man, but an MI6 agent, known only by the codename Black Panther. Severely wounded, his breaths came shallow and fast. The crack of gunfire echoed through the misty night air as distant shots tore through the silence. Bullets whizzed past as the agent struggled to free himself. With grit and sheer will, he broke loose from the wreckage. Bloodied and weakened, he crawled to the edge of the bridge, glanced at the crimson locket hanging from his neck, a perfect but incomplete circle, and without hesitation plunged into the icy river below. A sudden searing pain coursed through his side. A bullet had found its mark beneath the cold water. The darkness swallowed him, and the secret he bore threatened to be lost forever. Damian stood in the dim light of his apartment, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit with meticulous care. The quiet hum of the city outside barely penetrated the thick windows. At 27, he was an imposing figure, over 6 feet 3 inches tall, with sharp, handsome features that masked a mind always several steps ahead of those around him. His dark eyes, calm and observant, scanned the room briefly before settling on the worn leather briefcase resting on the table. He was no secret agent, nor was he tied to any agency, but the precision and intellect he possessed rivaled the best operatives. A Stanford PhD in science, Damian was a man of contradictions, quiet and reserved, yet capable of ruthless calculation when the situation demanded. Friends found a loyal ally in him. Enemies discovered a merciless adversary. "Elias," Damian called softly. From the kitchen, Elias appeared, a simple man from a small village, loyal and unassuming, carrying the quiet strength that grounded Damian's stormy mind. "Tea is ready, sir," Elias said, placing a steaming cup on the table. Damian nodded, appreciating the routine. The servant's presence was a steady anchor in a life often pulled by chaos. A sudden knock at the door broke the silence. Elias opened it to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark coat, Detective Chief Inspector Edward Hale of MI5, Damian's longtime friend and occasional collaborator on difficult matters. "Edward," Damian greeted with a slight nod. "No time for formalities," Edward said, stepping inside. "We have a situation, and I need your insight." Damian's eyes sharpened. Though he was not an agent, Edward knew well the depth of Damian's intellect and his uncanny ability to see patterns others missed. "Tell me everything," Damian said, settling into his chair as Edward began to lay out the details. The city outside seemed to fade away, the weight of the case settling between them. For Damian, this was where he was most alive, where science met shadow, and every secret demanded unraveling. Detective Chief Inspector Edward Hale's motorcycle cut through the night as Damian sat quietly behind him, his mind focused on the case ahead rather than the world around him. The city lights faded behind them as they reached an isolated estate surrounded by towering red brick walls. The iron gate creaked open, revealing a large, old building that had stood silent for years. Inside, Damian's eyes quickly assessed the scene. The worn floorboards, faded plaster, the weight of abandonment pressing in. In the center of the room lay a lifeless body, face down in a pool of dark blood. Damian knelt down, his gaze fixed on the wounds. 3 stab wounds, each spaced exactly 5 inches apart in perfect alignment. "The precision indicates the killer knew exactly what they were doing," Damian said coldly. "This was no impulsive act. There was no struggle, no resistance." Edward's eyes narrowed. "Who owns this place?" "Harold Whitmore, a man of influence. His daughter Vivian lives nearby." Damian's expression hardened. "Vivian Whitmore. She will have access here." Edward nodded. She does. I'll speak to her. Damian rose, voice low but firm. Arrange for a full post-mortem. Pay special attention to the depth and angle of the wounds. Precision is a message. Edward exhaled, the gravity of the case settling between them. This isn't just a murder, Damian said. It's a statement. The following day, Detective Chief Inspector Edward Hale invited Damian to his home. He had arranged for Vivian Whitmore, the daughter of their neighbor Harold Whitmore, to be present, hoping her presence might help focus Damian's mind on the matter at hand. Edward's wife, familiar with Damian's peculiarities, was also there. Edward sat in the drawing room, glancing at his watch. Damian hasn't arrived yet, his wife noted. It's 6:30, Edward replied. He promised to be here at exactly 6:35. He must be close, checking his watch, Edward smiled. Vivian, seated nearby, observed quietly. He's certainly an unusual man, she said. The most unusual, Edward replied. A PhD from Stanford, but his behavior is singular. Wait, there he is. The knock at the door came immediately. Damian entered with his usual composed demeanor, nodding slightly to the women before shaking Edward's hand. Today's weather is quite agreeable, Damian said as he took a seat. Edward's wife chuckled softly, and Vivian slipped on a pair of dark glasses. Edward introduced, "This is Vivian Whitmore, daughter of Mr. Harold Whitmore, Damian Shaw, son of Major General Malcolm Shaw." Damian smiled faintly. "You make it sound grander than it needs to be. Malcolm Shaw's son would suffice." Edward returned the smile. The two women exchanged a brief whisper and excused themselves. Damian's expression remained serious. Too bad. Perhaps they went to the kitchen. We're short-staffed today, Edward suggested. Did you invite her? Damian asked. Yes. I thought you two should meet. Damian nodded, though his focus remained sharp. Why the glasses? He asked quietly. She's sensitive to light, Edward's wife explained swiftly. Damian accepted the answer but said, I prefer honesty. I cannot tolerate barriers. After a brief pause, Edward returned to business. The wounds you analyzed. Your theory was correct. Their depth is uniform. Damian's gaze fixed on Edward. Have you identified the body? Number unknown to the area. No identification. Edward placed a leather bag on the table. This was found near the body. Damian opened it, examining the contents. Carpenter's tools. Yet the hands show no signs of manual labor. Soft, unblemished. Edward nodded. Whitmore still holds the key to the building. The property was not inherited, but purchased. Damian's interest sharpened. Purchased from whom? An old friend of his, who died 5 years ago after falling ill. The friend transferred ownership before his death, but never revealed the message he intended to deliver. Damian considered this. The renovated room, the only one updated. Whitmore claims ignorance, Edward confirmed. The friend died there, naturally. Damian's voice was low and firm. This building holds secrets. I want access. Edward turned to Damian and quietly handed him a small, old-fashioned key. Damian took it, turning it over carefully in his hand, his sharp eyes catching every detail. After a moment, he looked up and said, This key has been duplicated recently. There are wax particles inside the keyhole, a clear impression made for molding. Someone else has access. You understand what this means? Damian concluded, No detail is insignificant. Every stone and shadow speaks. The night was thick with swirling black clouds, the sky a turbulent sea of shadows. Detective Chief Inspector Edward Hale's jeep cut silently through the slick, rain-soaked road. Damian sat rigid beside him, eyes sharp, nostrils flared in silent calculation. After a moment, Damian tapped Edward's shoulder. It's confirmed. Someone duplicated the key from Whitmore's original. Edward glanced at him. Why? I'll find out soon enough. They approached the abandoned estate, surrounded by its weathered red brick walls. Damian studied the front gate closely. The lock isn't latched, Edward frowned. How can you tell? You're not an owl. Step aside. They circled to the back where the high wall loomed. Damian pulled a small torch from his pocket and shone it along the surface. "Can you support my weight?" Damian asked. Edward hesitated. "I don't follow." "I'm climbing. Sit down. I'll stand on your shoulders." Edward reluctantly crouched. Damian removed his shoes, stepped up, and quickly ascended the wall using the ventilation grills. He moved with calculated precision, reaching a vantage point where muffled footsteps echoed. From above, Damian spotted the locked door of the room where the first body had been found. Pale candlelight leaked beneath the crack. The corridor was otherwise swallowed by darkness. His gaze shifted to the martyr's grave nearby. The tombstone was raised slightly. Between stone and floor glowed an eerie light, and two fiery eyes burned in the shadows. Damian froze, heart pounding. A shriek shattered the silence, a piercing sound, part animal, part human. Without hesitation, Damian dropped silently into the adjacent room, knowing the shriek would send panic inside the locked chamber. The door swung open. Voices cried out in fear, and footsteps rushed toward the gate. Quiet returned. Damian crawled toward the main gate, glancing back as the tombstone settled. The gate was locked from outside. Confirming it, Damian turned back. The door to the victim's room stood open, darkness engulfing the space. He flicked on his torch. On the floor lay a second body, fresh wounds still bleeding, identical to the first, 3 perfectly spaced stab wounds. The victim was a well-dressed young man, belonging unmistakably to high society. Damian's voice was barely audible. "Today, them. Tomorrow, me." Clutched tightly in the corpse's fist was a scrap of paper. Damian carefully pried it free and studied it briefly under the torchlight before tucking it into his coat pocket. The room remained unchanged. Descending the wall moments later, Damian heard Edward's quiet praise. "New talent." "Or a monkey lady," Damian replied grimly. They returned to the gate. "Why trouble yourself?" Edward asked. "Give me the key." Inside, Damian shone his torch on the spot where the second body had been, only to find it gone. Just blood marks remained. Edward's frustration boiled over. "What is this?" Damian's tone was cold. "Some verses are removed from poetry, just like bodies vanish in mysteries." Edward bent down, examining fresh blood on the floor. "Where's the body?" "The angels took it. Destined for paradise," Damian replied, voice sharp with irony. Edward shook his head. "Let's wait till morning." Damian's eyes lingered on the grave. The tombstone rose again, and those same fiery eyes pierced the dark. Damian switched off his torch and pulled Edward back behind the wall. "What was that?" Edward whispered, trembling. "Something better left unseen," Damian said. A shriek pierced the night once more. Edward shuddered. "Close your eyes," Damian warned. "Not everyone survives what they see here." It was past midnight when Detective Chief Inspector Edward Hale's jeep pulled up outside a grand London townhouse. Damian sat stiffly beside him, his expression unreadable as the vehicle slowed. Edward glanced sideways. "This is where I leave you." Damian nodded silently as the jeep pulled away, leaving him alone under the dim glow of the street lamp. He stepped out and approached the closed garden gate. He rattled it lightly. A groggy watchman's voice called from behind the door. "Who's there at this hour?" "Damian Shaw," he replied calmly. "PhD from Standord." The gate creaked as the watchman reluctantly opened it. Damian strode up the pathway, his tall frame casting a long shadow. Inside, Genevieve Langley awaited in the parlor, a glass of whiskey in hand. The room smelled faintly of tobacco and expensive perfume. Their eyes met, history thick in the air. "Damian," she said, voice low and sultry. "You're late." He smiled faintly. "Time is fluid when one is burdened." They spoke quietly, the night weaving between confessions and old memories. She was his ex-girlfriend, now married to Alistair Langley, a man absent tonight. The whiskey loosened tongues and edges. Their flirtation rekindled a dangerous fire. Hours passed in hazy conversation until the night drew them closer, and Genevieve finally surrendered to the moment. Afterwards, as she slipped into sleep, Damian rose quietly. His eyes caught the corner of a folded paper beneath the bed. He retrieved it carefully, the same scrap he had found clutched in the dead man's hand. He unfolded it under the soft lamplight, studying the cryptic markings. Damian didn't tell Edward anything about the paper. The past and present collided in that fragile piece of paper, an enigma demanding unraveling. He unfolded the fragile scrap of paper under the soft lamplight, eyes narrowing as he studied the cryptic markings. Past and present collided on that sheet, an enigma demanding answers. Damian rose silently and left Genevieve's room, his mind racing. He made his way to the vast library of the Langley estate, a sanctuary of ancient tomes and fading secrets. The air was thick with dust and whispered histories. Flashlight in hand, Damian scanned the tall shelves, the faint glow catching the worn letterhead on a writing pad. The same watermark appeared on the paper in his hand, an emblem commemorating Alistair Langley's ancestors. The past was never far behind. Satisfied, Damian replaced the documents and returned to Genevieve's bedroom. She lay asleep, her steady breathing a quiet contrast to the storm in his mind. He settled beside her, exhaustion pulling him under. Morning light crept through the curtains. Damian awoke alone, the house silent. Without waking Genevieve, he dressed quickly and slipped out, the weight of the night pressing on him. He rode toward the city, seeking the truth buried beneath layers of time and deceit. His first stop was the mansion, the haunted house whispered about by locals. Damian met an elderly man, once a family member who had sold the property. "About 8 years ago," the man said, voice low. "Nathan bought it. Before he died, he transferred ownership to Harold Whitemore." "Who was Nathan?" Damian asked. "No one knows. He lived here 3 years, a recluse. Had a servant who still tends the place." "The caretaker of the grave?" Damian inquired. The man nodded solemnly. "Yes. Nathan discovered the grave, a martyr's resting place. Built it himself. Was generous, pious." "Why plaster only one room?" Damian pressed. "That was Nathan's doing too," the man answered. "People say he was a saint." Damian's thoughts deepened. Did strangers visit him? Number he was isolated. Leaving the man, Damian returned to the mansion. The caretaker stood by the gate, a stout, bearded man with red eyes that burned with a strange fire. Damian approached cautiously. "I come in service." "Begone!" the caretaker growled. Damian persisted, revealing his purpose. 2 murders under the Guardian's watch. The caretaker's eyes flickered with a haunted anger. "The police are fools. Let them search. This place is sacred." "Did anyone else come recently?" Damian asked. "Yes. Whitmore's daughter brought a visitor on the 14th night." Damian's mind raced. "A visitor?" "A lover," the caretaker spat. "They stayed until dawn. Then the body was found." Damian clenched his fists. "Desecration." The caretaker nodded solemnly. "My master, Mr. Nathan, left instructions to keep his grave unmarked." "Whitmore's daughter knows?" "Yes." Damian left, the weight of secrets heavy in his chest. He spent hours in the town, questioning those who might Edward was working when Damian called him to meet at a nearby restaurant. Edward arrived quickly. Damian sat at an empty table, drumming his fingers. "Any updates?" Edward asked. "Send that in a message. Where was Whitmore's daughter on the night of the 14th? "Why does it matter to you?" "Then focus. This case has her footprint all over it." Edward stood, frustrated. "Sit down," Damian said firmly, grabbing his arm. Edward sat reluctantly. "Why am I here?" "To keep you in the loop." Then Damian tells everything about the paper he got from the dead body's hand. The paper, the symbols. They point to Langley. Whitmore's daughter knows more. Find where she spent that night. I'll handle it. Also, trace Nathan's background, family, origins, contacts. Tea at your place tonight. Fine, Damian asked. Will you introduce me to Whitmore? Yes, with you present. When tea arrived, Damian said, "The caretaker of the martyr's grave is no ordinary man." "Why?" "He said police are fools." Edward frowned. "Who built the grave? Why plaster only one room?" Edward snapped, "Focus on facts." "Speculation isn't helpful." "The stranger's body there. It matters." Edward stared. "Explain." Damian said, "Details matter." "I'll be at your place tonight." Edward finished his tea. "Go." That evening, Damian and Edward waited in Whitmore's drawing room. Vivian, Whitmore's daughter, sat nearby, her dark glasses masking her eyes. Damian kept glancing at her with a mix of calculation and restraint. Edward occasionally observed Vivian when she wasn't looking. After a time, Harold Whitmore entered. Vivian quietly left the room. "Thank you for seeing us," Edward said. "Please, no trouble," Whitmore replied. "What do you wish to know about Nathan?" "I'm seeking details about his family and background," Edward explained. "We want to trace his relatives," Whitmore sighed. "I fear I can tell you little. Though Nathan was my close friend, much about his past remains unknown. Not even his place of origin. Number Nathan and I first met in Spain." Edward and Damian exchanged surprised looks. Whitmore continued, "It was 3 years ago, in Madrid. I was caught in an accident. A reckless driver lost control and nearly struck me. Nathan acted swiftly, pulling me away moments before impact. That day marked the start of our friendship." Damian's eyes narrowed. "And his origins?" Whitmore shook his head. "I only knew him as Nathan, a man of mystery, generous and devout. His past remained locked." Edward accepted a cigar from Whitmore, lighting it with care. Damian sat silently, observing. Whitmore regarded him thoughtfully. "There are rumors Nathan was more than he seemed. Perhaps a man of secrets." "What of his servant, the caretaker of the grave?" Edward asked. Whitmore nodded slowly. "A devout man, entrusted with safeguarding Nathan's final resting place." "Did Nathan's will specify that?" Edward pressed. "Yes. The caretaker is to remain in the mansion's outer quarters." Edward asked about visitors. "In the beginning, many were curious. Now, no one dares approach. The place carries its own weight." Edward remarked, "Some say the building is haunted?" Whitmore shrugged. "Perhaps. I only own it legally. No family has lived there." Edward rose to leave. "Thank you for your time. This matter is grave." Outside, Edward snapped at Damian. "You never fail to test my patience." Damian smirked. "And I consider shooting you for your lack of curiosity." Edward frowned. "Why didn't you ask where Whitmore's daughter was on the night of the 14th? "I will. I'll ask her myself." Damian turned toward Whitmore's garage. Vivian was backing her car out of the garage when Damian approached. "Miss Whitmore," Damian cleared his throat. "I believe we've met before." "Yes, indeed," Vivian replied promptly. "Would you be kind enough to give me a lift?" "Of course. Please, get in." She drove, and Damian settled beside her, grateful for the quiet. "Where would you like to be dropped off?" Vivian asked. "To be honest, I don't want to be dropped off at all." Vivian smiled briefly but said nothing. After some time, Damian broke the silence. "Are you troubled by something?" "Number." "Not at all," Vivian answered, clearly startled, then looked away. "I thought so. People often find me annoying for no reason." "I don't find that true." "That's fortunate. Though, if I tried, I'm sure I could annoy you." Vivian smiled faintly. "Try if you wish." Damian grinned slightly. "Then brace yourself." She said nothing, her attention drifting. Suddenly, Damian's voice grew serious. "Where were you on the night of the 14th? Vivian gasped softly. "What?" "Careful with the steering. Wouldn't want an accident now." Damian's tone was light, but edged with steel. "See? I've already unsettled you." He laughed briefly, slapping his thigh. Vivian's breath came fast, her hands trembled on the wheel. "I'm in a hurry," she said, breathless. "Where should I drop you?" "You haven't answered my question." "That's none of your business. Who are you to ask?" You're angry now, but this matters. If the police learn of it, trouble will follow. I can ensure they never ask." Vivian remained silent, licking dry lips. "I won't ask where you were," Damian said. "Only who you were with." "I'm thirsty," she said, voice strained. "Then let's stop at Cafe Nebresco nearby." They exited the car and walked quietly to a secluded corner. Before ordering, Damian requested a glass of water. "I'm certain he still had the key when he returned it to you," Damian said quietly. Vivian flinched. "Who?" "Don't evade. He never told you his real name or address. Once he returned the key, you never saw him again." Vivian's face drained of color. In a hollow voice, she asked, "What do you want to know now? When and how did you meet him?" "About 2 months ago." "Where?" "At an event. I don't recall who introduced us." "What kind of event?" "Alistair Langley's birthday, I believe." Damian nodded thoughtfully. "When did he return the key?" "Evening of the 15th. The body was found the next morning." Vivian's breathing grew heavier. She placed her cup down and slumped in her chair, fragile as a bird caught in a storm. "The key was with him all day. He made a duplicate and returned yours. After that, he disappeared. Am I wrong?" "You're right," she whispered. "He claimed to be a traveler, stayed at the Imperia Hotel. I checked recently. No one by that name stayed there." She fell silent. Damian nodded slowly. The friendship's only purpose was to get the key to that mansion. "I want to go home. I'm not well." "Just 2 more minutes," Damian gestured gently. "Where did you mostly meet him?" "At the Django nightclub." "What was his connection with Genevieve?" Vivian snapped. "Why bring her into this?" "Will you answer or not? Or do you not know?" "I never saw them meet." "Thank you. I won't ask his name. Obviously, he hid it. But if you could describe him, I'd appreciate it." Vivian hesitated, clearly distressed and fearful. Damian stood alone on the pavement as Vivian's car disappeared into the night. He pulled a piece of chewing gum from his pocket and began chewing thoughtfully, the quiet companion to his restless mind. Unlike others, he had no interest in cigars or pipe tobacco, nor in detective novels. His thoughts were his only refuge. He hovered at the edge of the street as if ready to cross, but did not move. His mind circled around Alistair Langley. The note found near the second body bore the watermark of Langley's personal stationery. The man seen with Vivian must be connected to Langley, perhaps the very man Genevieve mentioned, though even she claimed ignorance of him. If Genevieve was involved in some conspiracy, why mention him at all? Or was she simply unaware of his full identity? The question gnawed at Damian. Meanwhile, why had the caretaker kept Vivian's presence from the authorities? The mystery of the mansion and its occupants deepened. Damian barely registered the world around him until a car pulled up beside him. It was Vivian. "Thank God I found you," she said, leaning out the window. "I knew you'd seek me again," Damian replied, opening the door and sliding in beside her. The car moved smoothly through the night. "Please, help me," Vivian whispered, voice trembling. "I'm trapped." "Think I'm your lifeguard?" Damian asked coldly. "Just keep me safe. If my father learns..." She trailed off. "He won't," Damian assured her. "Women have entered the battlefield beside men, but men often deceive. No illusions." Vivian remained silent. "Forget all that. I'll keep your name from this. Satisfied? Stop the car here." She slammed on the brakes. "Why?" Damian asked, eyes sharp. "That man," Vivian breathed. "I'll face him." "Who? The one who drew me into this?" "Where?" "He just entered that bar. Leather jacket, brown trousers." "Go! I'll handle this." "No, I'll come too." "Go!" Damian snapped, voice steel. Vivian recoiled, then turned the car away. Damian entered the bar alone. He spotted the man immediately, alone, tense, scarred forehead, habitually tilting his head slightly to the right. Damian settled nearby, chewing gum. The man was waiting. Anxiety marked his posture until another arrived, and his tension eased. Damian overheard their conversation. "Everything's unraveling." "That old man's lost it." Damian's eyes narrowed. "They trust their instincts," the man said. "But our comrades are cowards. When those voices come, they flee." "Voices? Whatever. We ignore them." "What about the 2 deaths?" "Amar Tavi's curse. Always this way." "What now?" "Tonight, we settle it. No police presence now." "True. But someone else was there. The one in the outer room. Let's move. But first, whiskey?" They drank. Damian stepped outside to a phone booth, dialing Edward's office. "Yes, it's me. All is well, just a cold. Listen, within an hour, that building must be secured with armed guards. No questions. Fail, and Holmes won't help Watson again." Returning inside, Damian heard, "The old man's instincts rarely fail." Right or wrong, who cares? What if that woman shows? She wouldn't dare testify. Admitting she spent the night there is dangerous. She might not know how vital the key was. Damian sipped coffee, memory sharp. "They're coming tonight," said the jacketed man. Damian's gaze hardened. The 2 men disappeared into the shadows as Damian's taxi idled nearby. Following silently, he watched them vanish into the labyrinth of Arkham Lane's twisting alleys. Losing their trail, Damian feigned interest in a bookstore's window, his eyes never leaving the door where they had entered. Minutes later, a man with a brown beard and a furrowed brow emerged, his gaze sharp and unmistakably familiar. Damian moved quickly, pressing his ear to the door. Then, without warning, it swung open, revealing 2 figures waiting inside. What awaits Damian beyond that door? Who are these men, and what secrets will they reveal? Will Damian uncover the truth behind the haunted mansion and the shadowy figures entangled in its mystery? Or will the darkness swallow him whole? If you've enjoyed this journey into the shadows, please like, share, and subscribe to Obscura Chronicles. Stay tuned. The next episode promises to unravel more secrets, and you won't want to miss it. What do you think lies beyond the door? Share your theories in the comments below.